Oh, that's so quiet. That's just, they can't tell that. It was probably very loud in the video. Look who's back. Sam's back in town. That means the three of us are here. Sean was actually in Toronto this morning covering their morning skate and other things for other publications, but he's not on the show today. He'll be here tomorrow, and he'll give us a report about some of the things he learned talking with Jim Nill and some other very interesting conversations he had up in Toronto's morning skate with both the Leafs and the Stars. How about our pregame show? Luds, Sam, John, me. Let's get it started right here on DLLS.
Get it ready, boys.
Well, this is also one of those benchmark games. It's the DLS pregame show for the Dallas Stars and the Toronto Maple Leafs. We welcome you in the podcast studio alongside Craig Ludwig and Sam Nessler and our producer, John Anderson. I'm Owen Newkirk. The Saturday night hockey night in Canada, Montreal, is second to none. But a Tuesday night in Toronto with the bright lights and the media horde there is pretty close to that. And Luds, we begin tonight with the fact that the Stars had their 7-game winning streak and their 9-game point streak snapped on Sunday in Ottawa. It's a great trip so far at 3-1. If they go 4-1, that'd be a really great road trip.
Yeah, especially playing against the Toronto team that's at home and that's going to be hungry. They haven't had a real good blast going on here their last couple of games either, so they're going to be hungry as also in front of their fans. So, for Dallas, I don't think they weren't great in the Ottawa game, and they had, they lost the game in, what did we say, 40 seconds or something like that. But overall, they weren't super, but I don't think they were terrible. I mean, considering this is a 5-game road trip, I think they've done pretty well.
The thing about this sort of setup is it's been a while since the Dallas Stars beat the Toronto Maple Leafs, and that's kind of the problem of talking about being 4-1 on this road trip. Do you know that the last time Dallas beat Toronto in any game, home or away, Ben Bishop was their goaltender, and it was on February 13th, which is exactly 4 years and 11 months ago, just about, well, almost exactly. That's right, February 13th, 2020.
That wouldn't be exactly that.
It was close. Yeah, it wasn't exactly. Think about this, Let's. It was a month before the league shut down for the COVID lockdown. When it was a month and a half after the Winter Classic, and they beat Toronto 3-2 in Toronto. They are 0-5-2 in their last 7 games against the Leafs. Why is it that they seem to have trouble against this team?
They scored more goals in Dallas in those particular games. It's funny. I know that I think it happens to all teams. Everybody has somebody else's number that just is uncharacteristic about whether you're a good team, a poor team. There goes my head blown up. I just think that sometimes when you're on the road and you're in places like Toronto, Montreal, everything on the outside is a little bit bigger, and not as much as it is at home in some other buildings. So I think it's hard to explain at times, only because and the thing is that the worst ones, when it starts to be, oh my God, how can that happen again, is when you have the lead and you're playing a great game and all of a sudden they score 2 goals in a minute and a half and they win the hockey game. So even like the game back here in Dallas, I mean, it felt like there was a win coming down the road, and not so much.
And it's not just in Toronto, right? With the Ottawa stretch, right? They haven't won since 2016. Where you could kind of try to explain it away as maybe they've had some bad circumstances. And Dallas does have usually a fair amount of Ontario players, guys from the greater Toronto area. So maybe the distractions of friends and family and people that they've known since they were kids being there. Maybe the excitement of playing a game at what we used to call Air Canada Centre, and it's now Scotiabank Arena. Maybe that would be it. But the fact that it's in Dallas too. I can remember overtime win for Auston Matthews, that big celebration. He deserved it. It was a great play. That just seems to happen with this team. Now, Maple Leafs are a good team. In fact, they're a very good team, but they've lost a couple in a row, whereas the Stars have won 7 of their last 8. Both of these teams fancy themselves contenders, don't they, Sam?
Yeah, and I think Toronto actually is one now with the new coach and the new style they're playing. They look like a harder team to play against. He doesn't give them as much leeway. You know, he talked about today wanting a more complete game from them, and that's exactly what he preaches and what he's always coached, and that's what Toronto's always missed. They've been able to high fly and score goals and do all these other things, and I think that's one of the big reasons they've hurt Dallas is their big players always played like their big players, and sometimes the Stars didn't. But it's a harder team to play against, and I was excited for that first matchup. It was a good game. Obviously, the Stars played a very good game and got robbed by a certain goalie, but it'll be exciting tonight again because I think these are two legit. I think Lud said it. These are two teams that are Stanley Cup contenders and could play each other in the final.
You know, I said exactly what you said this morning before I started looking on the computer and started looking and I still feel the same way that they're a better team. They're going to be a better team come playoff time, for sure. So I'm going to go find ways to be able to prove it that they're better. Goals for were better last year than they are this year. The goals against were better last year than they are right now. That's the one that got
They are
me.
only like a +11, which is kind of odd.
Exactly. But again,
What about the record?
well, their record. I didn't look at the record. I don't look at the record. I look at numbers.
Right,
You know,
but-
I'm a what is that called again when you get analytical guy now?
You are.
Yeah,
You are
whatever.
a very much
But I
advanced
thought
stats.
there would be this big difference in how many goals they're giving up. There was even a couple other things I thought, well, I'm going to go look at this, and that didn't make a difference either. So, to come out of the chute this year, they gave up 6 goals. They gave up 6 goals. I think they gave up 7 goals. Now, that is in a transition of learning Berube's system. But I think what they're doing is they're playing a little bit tighter game. I think they're hanging around games. I think when they have a lead, they're not just going out and trying to pick up more points. They're shutting teams down. And it may not result in more goals for or against, but they're just kind of suffocating teams.
You have some numbers for us?
I was just they're similar. They're 27-15-2. I think they were 21-10-8 last year, so very similar numbers. They were at the bottom of their division,
him as
though.
you were talking. Look up the other one, switch back to this one, and now he's guessing what he saw.
It was somewhere around there.
He could have just made
Somewhere
two windows.
around
the
there.
same. So remember when I said actually, and it was sort of close, but not actually? Now I'm giving it to Sam. All right. Lineup news. The big thing for the day is Jake Oettinger will get the start and goal. It will be looking for his first win in his career against Toronto. We talked about how the Stars have struggled against the Leafs in recent history. Well, Jake, since he's been a Dallas Star, has not beaten the Leafs. It's not a big sample size as he's only played 3 times, but he's 0-3, and he has an 8.73 goals against average against
Were
them.
those games there? Or were they even? Or
A little bit of
2-1, 1-2?
I think, yeah, it was
Okay.
2-1.
Yep.
And so with that, he's got to try to find a way to get a win against a goalie he knows very well in Joseph Wall. And you go, well, how well does he know? Well, they spent parts of 3 seasons together, a long time in their teenage years with the U.S. National Development Program. Then they played on opposite sides of the BUBC, Boston College, Boston University, Hockey East rivalry. And now they're on opposite sides of the NHL's Eastern and Western conferences, so they don't see each other nearly as much.
Yeah, he talked about this morning that they're still good friends. They go out to dinner whenever they're in town. It's funny. Jake talked about how similar they are, and they are similar goalies. They're big goalies. They're super athletic. They both kind of play back on their goal line a little bit more than other goalies. And Wall was the story in the last game here in Dallas, so maybe Jake's the story in Toronto tonight.
You know, the big thing, Luddy, is when you think about the Toronto side of this rivalry, having to go to Toronto, suddenly there's a lot of national media based in Toronto paying attention to the Dallas Stars. And we're seeing Pierre LeBrun had an article in The Athletic yesterday because he was able to talk to a couple of Dallas Stars in his area of operation. Today, all sorts of notable Canadian journalists are talking about the Dallas Stars. Stars are listed on, because they talked to Jim Nill because he's in Toronto, on TSN's Insider Trading. A lot of times they don't get noticed. But when you're in Toronto, and this was always the rub about guys getting more attention for national awards. By the way, I haven't told these guys yet, but I was talking with Sean. We're going to do a segment or two tomorrow where we do our mid-season favorites for the NHL awards, right? So who is in the driver's seat?
Exactly, Sam. At least now we got a heads up on
we
it.
We got to focus on this game
a little
first.
bit.
But we always say that in the past, Dallas needs to show well in those places, Montreal, Toronto, Boston, New York, where a lot of voters are to get the attention. I don't feel like this year that's as big of a concern. They're just trying to win a hockey game.
I don't think players go in thinking that either. I don't think that they go in and say, we're on a big stage here and I gotta light it up so that I get votes for end of the year awards.
Probably not.
I don't think that.
But
there may be a player.
We're aware of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just don't think that enters our mind. I mean, they know it's a big stage and it's going across Canada and everything else. And so I don't think it's any different than any of the Canadian. I mean, well, it is. I mean, Calgary, you probably don't get the same thing out of there. Edmonton, you do because of that one guy that they got that's pretty good, number 97. But I think
involved
Toronto,
in a slew footing yesterday too.
And how about
he was the victim.
And
of
speaking of that, how do they win a hockey game 1-0? It's his birthday and he gets the one goal. You know what I mean? Like that's just what those guys do on special days. Anyway, what are we going to talk about? Nothing. Toronto. I personally, I could care less what Toronto is, and I think that the guys that I played with and knew of, it was more important to beat them just in general because you know how hard the media is on them. And these guys are, like you said, everybody knows who they are and things like that. They probably know more of the third and fourth line guys and a lot of other teams around the league just because of where they play.
Well, let's talk about how hard they are. The media is in just a moment about their power play. We'll get to that. But first, here's a look at the Stars' expected lineup for tonight. As we saw this morning from Pete DeBoer, no expected changes. That means Matej Blumel gets his second consecutive NHL game. Sam, he was not very noticeable, I thought, in the first game. Not necessarily in a bad way, which is good, right? But I also didn't think that they had a ton of opportunities to really show out offensively, which you need to see from him.
Yeah, I was hoping to see a little bit more with him injected in the lineup. I think that's what they were hoping for. It's why they made the switch with him and Arttu Huru. But I didn't notice him a whole lot. The only time I did notice him was during that span when the Stars were getting absolutely rolled on, and he was having a couple turnovers. But that was what everybody in green was, or I guess white was doing at the time. So you hope that he has a little bit more of an impact. I mean, he was scoring at such a high clip. It's just we're seeing over and over again. Obviously, it's only one game right now, but we're seeing over and over again this season with how many rookies have played, how hard it is to translate AHL scoring to NHL scoring.
Let's take a look at the defense and goaltending. You can see, obviously, no changes there. Oettinger in goal. Matt Dumba will play, Luds, his 700th career NHL game tonight. 699 games between Minnesota, mostly, Arizona and Tampa Bay, 250 points, and 516 penalty minutes. I looked up his career hits because he's supposed to be a physical guy. 1,053 career hits. Again, hits are an interesting subjectively tracked stat. They're not always as correct as, well, that was a shot on goal, at least in theory, points, that kind of thing. He ranks 93rd all-time in NHL history among defensemen. And I'm just wondering how much of his style of play is affected right now because of wearing the full shield, protecting the facial injury, because I would imagine he can't do all the things he would normally do, including maybe dropping the gloves because he has the shield on.
The only thing I can think of is the breathing. I don't know how the breathing would be in there and how hard you want to go. I think if anything, it kind of turns you loose a little bit because you're not, sometimes you go into the pile and like that and you're getting an errant stick or you're getting the glove in the face. That's not happening here. So I don't think it would hold him. Now, maybe because of the injury or whatever it may be. Does anybody know what that is?
No, they've never
we have no idea.
about it.
He did say it was similar to Marchment, as much as we got.
Wouldn't they?
But not in a game.
No.
Yeah, but not in a game. You would think that, so I don't know. Does he have a plate in there or something like that? Or
We don't know.
Nobody
Did
knows.
he have a surgical procedure?
It's a little sketchy for me.
There's some smoke
very
there.
odd.
I don't
It's
know if
very
there's
odd.
fire, but
Yeah, I honestly, I think it frees him up a little bit. And I do think that I think he's trying not to hit as much as he'd like to. That's my opinion. I see times when I think he's going to, it looks like he's got somebody lined up. And I think that's because he's picked up some penalties. And he doesn't want to give anybody a reason to maybe take them, and give somebody else an opportunity. So, but I don't think that mask, if anything, I think it would help him going into a pile.
It's unfortunate because when he's playing not to make a mistake, the Stars don't need that.
Why are we
I don't know
chuckling
why he's
again,
laughing at it.
Sam?
It's probably
Is
chat.
it
I'm
me
guessing.
or
No, it's
I don't
probably
know.
chat.
Are we allowed to put that on?
why aren't we?
Because, hold on. There's two things that are funny. The one that I'm laughing at is a separate one, but let's show the first one. GM Ben is in the chat right now on our pregame show, and he said, if the Stars win and get a shutout tonight, Sam has to get on one knee and reenact his proposal to Luddy in studio on the post-game show. So that was kind of funny.
Fair.
Well, then there was some plumbing humor from GM Ben.
Oh, here we go.
He used some language we can't
Welcome
put
back,
up on the
Sam.
screen.
In the chat and still
But-
going.
If our boss is the one doing it,
No, we're not going to do it. We're gonna behave. He's testing
Stick to
us,
the
and we're going to
rules.
stay with it. But he said he usually has some bad plumbing involved. So, anyway, I wanted to mention, and then we're going to get to Craig Berube here, that Toronto was shut out at home 3-0 by the Vancouver Canucks on Saturday. They haven't lost 3 straight regulation games all season, but after losing in Carolina and then that home game against Vancouver, if Dallas wins in regulation tonight, it would be the first 3-game losing streak. They've had a 3-winless streak once for Toronto this season. Well, of course, the big media is all over the place, and everybody's trying to show a good face. So both coaches were kind of cracking some jokes. Here's Pete DeBoer this morning. Perhaps.
why isn't it working?
Yeah.
1 second.
Good dance.
We'll just sit here and look like 3 students.
Yeah, they seem to have our number here in Dallas. Our Robertson has to outplay their Robertson for the first time. So that message is going to be delivered clearly here to Jason for us. So we've got to start there. And you know what? And you know, obviously I'm joking, but bigger than that, you've got to play a really good game against them. I mean, if you're off in one area, if your special teams are off, or your goaltending's off, or the detail in your 5-on-5 game's off, they have too good a team. They'll make you pay. So we've got to put it all together here tonight.
He may be joking, but Jason Robertson has not beaten Nick Robertson head-to-head, Stars versus Leafs. Now, there were some games where Robo played against them when Nick was not up in the NHL. He was either AHL or injured. But here, we've got it now. Sam usually has bad bleeps with the plumbing. That's
Censored.
That's why we couldn't. Yeah, he censored it. Well done. By the way, that is really solid producing right there, I want to say.
Well done.
Yes. Wow, that is some unintentional humor right there. Luds,
I think that's got something to do with stool softener. I don't know.
I just checked out.
Yeah.
so Pete may have been trying to crack a joke in front of all the Toronto media, but there's some truth behind this. He needs Jason Robertson on his current form, who's playing better, to play better than his brother Nick.
Yeah, and I think Robo will put the pressure on himself, to be honest with you. I don't think he likes to hear it all the time, especially I'm sure the pay scale comes up every once in a while when those two guys get together too, because he's only on a 1-year deal, I think, and not making too much, but the other one's doing okay. Now, that all being said, the local Robo is to the Robo that we know.
Loco Robo.
Local Robo. The local Robo is back to the Jason Robertson that we're used to seeing. So good for him, good for the team. And I think more importantly for him, I don't think he has to light it up tonight, but I think he'd like to. But more importantly for him is to get the win. I think the win is the biggest thing.
I do too.
You know.
Now, yesterday, the Leafs had practice. They had an optional today. So, Craig Berube had to face the media both days. He had an interesting way of starting his scrum. This was Monday right after Leafs practice.
That last Saturday, there was kind of a difference of opinion after the game. Mitch thought generally was
What'd you guys think?
not your best, but
Where were we bad at?
the offensive side of things.
Score?
Yeah.
Because, we didn't score. It's hard to win, eh?
It's funny how that
You
works.
like 0-0 ties?
So he went on and actually answered a serious answer about what he didn't like, what he'd like to see more of. But there's two parts. One, trying to be a little silly. And the thing that really cracks me up, Luds, is that Craig Berube is a tough guy. He was a tough player. He was a very physical, in-your-face type of player. That stare down before he starts to smile and says, "Yeah, you're right, we didn't score a goal." How often do you think the reporters there are going, "Is he serious?" And they're not really sure. That would melt some ice with some of those stares.
Well, and I think that it kind of puts the reporters back, and when they come in, they may be a little bit more careful with the questions that they're asking. There may be a question they had written down, and they're like, maybe not today, So, but when you find out he's just your typical hockey guy, when they're off the ice, they're off the ice. Now he has the same fire from the drop of the puck to the end of the puck, and I'm sure that, especially in the beginning of the season, that there were some eyes that were wide open in the locker room when they were giving up 6 goals and 6 goals and 7 goals and things like that. And he said enough is enough. And so now I think they're getting to the point where they're feeling a little bit better about. I think they're actually looking forward to the playoffs, to be honest with you. I think they feel like they're going to be better prepared for the playoffs, where I think for a long, long time it's been tough heading into the playoffs just because of all the negativity around them.
Well, let's take a look at something that we talk about, how scrutinizing the media is in Toronto. Toronto has gone 2 for 12, 16.7% on the power play their last 5 games. But before that, and you add in the last 5 and the 10 before that, they are at 25% over the previous 15. Well, Craig Berube got asked about this yesterday. This was part of Monday's practice, and he was dead on with his stats.
On the note about more practice time, how do you feel getting extra work with the power play today may finally break the dam in the next couple of games?
Yeah, power play's been 23% over the last 10 games, which is pretty good. Could it be better? Yeah. For me, it's sometimes a time of game when you get a power play and you just kill your momentum with it. That's what stands out, and we've got to be better at that, where we generate momentum off the power play. It doesn't always go in the net, but we got to generate momentum, and how you do that is by execution and attacking and shooting pucks.
Sometimes I asked John this, and said sometimes you guys are accused of passing too much, and I wondered if that was out of respect for each other because they've all got such good shots and good scoring.
There's a lot of talent out there.
Yeah.
Can make it tricky sometimes, but the goal's got to be. Why didn't this guy pass it to me? I shot it, or whatever. You can't have that in your head. You got to have an opportunity to deliver the puck to the net. We got to deliver it to the net. That's how they go in the net. And with Nyzy in front of the net, he does a great job of being there all the time. He's very good at it, and our flankers and our top guy, their job's to get pucks to the net.
What do you think about that, Luds? There's 2 things I want to add. One is they were 6 for 26 in their last 10 games, 23.1%. So Berube's dead on. But he also talked about how he isn't afraid to go with 5 forwards on the power play with Mitch Marner running point.
Well, what do you think caught my ear? Why do you think this is being played? I mean, it was the part about directing pucks to the net.
That's why I asked.
And sometimes you get away from the set plays, and I think from them, and it's a good point that, and what he's trying to say is, when you talk about the 5 forwards that can be on the ice for them, they're electric players. Dallas has the same kind of thing. They're electric players. But basically what he's been preaching to his guys, and you'll probably see it tonight, is pucks go to the net. And so maybe we should play that in the locker room here.
So
sometimes.
When you sent that, before I really listened, I just kind of listened to it quickly this morning and then watched all those things through. I thought it was Steve's spot.
Did you really?
Outside of the percentage, I didn't really hear that part, but I just listening to him talking about being more direct and all this thing. I was like, that's good. He's talking about what we've been talking about. And then it ended, and I was like, that's definitely not Steve's spot.
Well, that's kind of
so
why
related, though.
That's kind of why it in my head, I'm like, oh, he needs to hear this.
Yeah.
Like, we need to get this to him. But I don't want to keep doing that.
The silly thing is that it's not reinventing the wheel, and all these coaches know this. That they're, Berube said something to the effect of, can't worry about not getting a pass because we need shots directed on the net. You won't score if you don't get pucks to the net.
It's like, and I think that's been insinuated about Miro, is that he's trying to keep everybody happy.
Yeah, defer.
The puck goes here. I don't know if that's true. I'm maybe somebody's talked to him, but I highly doubt that that's true. But there may be something inside of him that says, we got to get it to Robo. I got to get it to this guy. And at some point, as we beat this dead horse again, it's going to have to get directed to the net, because what we've seen in the past week or so, when the so-called second unit comes out, there ends up, and they only get the 30. They get the scraps, right?
I was just going to say scraps.
They get the scraps. And they get, whether it's 20, 30 seconds, maybe less, they're going to have 3 or 4 shots in their 20 or 30 seconds. And so I think, and what's crazy about it is the guys with the higher shooting percentage is on the first unit, right? And Jamie Benn's in front of the net, where that's a big horse in front of the net, and he's not moving from there. So they did score the 1 goal where Jamie wasn't there, and so, but we do like that they changed something up. Maybe that was a little tweak that they scored the goal on.
Let's take a look at the Leafs lineup for tonight, and it starts with their forwards. And the change that they're talking about starting in practice yesterday and then going into tonight's game is Steven Lorentz moved up to play on the left wing with Auston Matthews and Mitch Marner. The last time these two teams faced each other, which was back in mid-December, so a little over about a month ago, Nyes was playing with Matthews and Marner at that point. Well, Pacioretty's a healthy scratch. He was playing with Tavares and Nylander. So now Nyes plays with them. And this is not a bad group, Bloods.
It's complement. Well, the two top lines, I think they're waiting for Domi to maybe step it up a little bit. He hasn't quite been what he is. Robertson's been great for that team. I mean, he puts puck in. He's got a lot of speed. But I think what they're doing on them top two lines is they're complementing Matthews and Marner with Lorentz and Tavares and Nylander with Nyes. And they're splitting it up because sometimes they play too much the same. Nyes goes to the front of the net. The kid drives the net. He stays at the net. So, and you got where Matthews and Marner in the last two games, they're -7. So there's got to be something that they're trying to add or separate. And we'll see how that all pans out for them tonight.
Well, go back to that real quick, John, and then we'll show the D. Luddy was laughing about how many umlauts were there the other night. Apparently, according to the Toronto Maple Leafs Twitter account, David Kemp should have an umlaut over the A. So we miss.
I don't even know what we're talking about.
The
right
two
now.
little dots over
Umlaut?
the A. Umlaut, the little two dots.
Oh, the two little dots are umlauts?
See, like Blumel and Beck.
Yeah.
Well, Kemp should have
I
one.
was not
So
really too concerned about that.
Anyway, let's go to the D now.
Sorry for Kemp.
Joseph Wall in net, as we were talking about, and Philippe Myers back in the lineup. He was not part of the group that played the Stars in December, as, of course, Jake McCabe is out skating now, just started to, but he's injured, and so he won't play. Any thoughts on the D or the goalies of the Leafs?
I hear that Tanev guy's pretty
Yeah, I
good,
was about
Sam.
to say that second
pretty good
pairing
there,
right
isn't it?
side. God, we miss him here. Just looking at him, he's got 14 points. That's more than the three Nils Lundqvist, Smith, and Dumba combined on the back end. He's got more or close to. I think he's only 5 points short of Heiskanen. Like he's playing above his level of offense, adding to the fact that he's also tough as nails, block shots like crazy. He spit out another tooth this season. You just love him. Like
You know what else he's got more of? Money. That's why he's over
Big
there.
reason why he's over there.
Of course. Somebody wanted to give him 2 extra years than what he was going to get, so it's hard. And, wants to go home. But what is interesting, maybe we'll play it later, but there was a reporter this morning that asked Tanev the question, is there anything that you didn't know about the team you played with last year, meaning the Dallas Stars, that surprised you? And he started off with Thomas Harley. And he said, the kid is good. The kid has got a good stick. He's got good offensive instincts. He's a good offensive player. And then obviously the only other one he talked about was Essa. And why wouldn't he talk about Essa? Him and Essa are kind of similar. I mean, Tanev, skates a little harder.
And they played together last year.
Yeah, and they would look good again this year. Tanev would look great. I mean, with Thomas, but I know talk about all that kind of stuff. But he's a great defenseman. And you look at their number one guy, and Morgan Riley, he's a -14, and Chris Tanev is +14. And he's how many points does he say he's got?
14.
Yeah, he's got 4. Well, mention that. A lot of 14s going on tonight.
So the Leafs.
That's all we got.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much wraps the talking points up, except for who's hot for these two teams and Sam. Jason Robertson, 12 points in his last 8 games for the Stars, along with Rope Hintz, who has 4 goals, 6 points in his last 7. Pete talked about Rope being a goal scorer. That's how he sees him, more than a setup guy. He needs to continue to do that. For Toronto, oh boy, Auston Matthews back after the injury. He's played for the last 5 games. He has 8 points in that stretch. Mitch Marner has 8 points in his last 5, 21 in his last 15 games. Almost all of those assists. 4 goals, 17 assists. And Matthew Nyes, that Luddy was talking about, 8 points in his last 5. Now, they didn't have a great game against Vancouver. No goals. They lost in Carolina. I would be curious to see this high-flying offensive Leafs team being challenged a bit by Berube tonight. But he interestingly pointed out against Dallas yesterday and today to take what Dallas gives them. He doesn't want to get run and gun, which is very different than what Auston Matthews, Mitch Marner, and the Toronto Maple Leafs of the last few years have done.
Well, listen, Mitch Marner has been up for a Selke before. He plays at both ends of the rink. He plays hard. He's aware of what it. I actually think, if I remember right, I looked at it this morning. I think Marner had like 86 points last year. I think he's at 53 right now. And am I right, or am I? I'm see if I'm losing my mind.
59 right now.
59, and he had 86, I think, last year. And just so happens he's at the end of his deal.
Yeah.
So there
which he won't talk about, which I like.
Yeah. So you can see he's got motivation, not only to do well in the playoffs and all this other kind of stuff, but he's got motivation. I don't know. He's whatever he decides to do, he's going to be doing okay, and he's been doing. He's
going to get paid for it.
And sure. You know what? But we talk about those two. Nylander, Tavares got 20 goals, I think, already. I think John Tavares got 20 goals, and Nylander's got like 25, points. 24, 25 goals. So
24.
Those are their top four guys.
Yes,
and then you throw in Morgan Riley, who's an offensive guy. So Dallas got their hands full with this team, and they've got to play well on their own end again. I say that all the time, but there's some guys here that don't need 4 or 5 chances to score.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. Our pregame show, don't forget to find us on YouTube. Right after the game, we will do our full postgame show. The 3 of us will be here along with our producer, John, who is going to let Luddy take us out of our pregame show for Stars and Leafs tonight.
I believe that they are going to crush these guys tonight.
We all silly like the mayor.